I've listened to Asia by Steely Dan for years.
And I listened to it once yesterday.
Welcome to Spin It. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Spin It, the record ranking podcast for people who would rather be listening to music. I'm James, and with me, a little extra steely today, is Connor.
I'm Steely Dan.
You're not.
No, I'm Steely Dan.
Your SpongeBob jokes are no good here.
I'm the Mixtaper?
No, don't lie. He could be his own.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm James.
Also not true. You're just Connor. Not just. I don't mean just in
Whoa,
like a,
just
I don't mean
Connor?
just in
Dang,
like a,
okay.
no,
Wow, okay.
That's not what I meant. I just meant that that's the only person that you are.
Wow.
Right, so Steely Dan. What do you know about Steely Dan? This is a band that I think could be on the fringe of your classic rock, like normal music listening tendencies, but I don't know how much you do know.
Man, what don't I know about Steely Dan?
At this point, I just take that to mean you know nothing.
I am a bit of a Jon Snow when it comes to Steely Dan.
Jon Snow?
Yeah. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Is that a Game of Thrones thing?
It's a Game of Thrones reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you know I don't get it. What about yacht rock in general? Do you listen to a lot of yacht rock or like jazz rock?
Well, I've been making an epic yacht rock playlist, actually, my entire life.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but what's on it?
Well, a lot of stuff, but I haven't listened to any of it yet because I'm saving it for when I finally own a yacht.
Oh, you're building up a yacht rock catalog for when it's time, when the time is right.
Exactly. So I can rock on my yacht.
Do you think you'll ever own a yacht? You don't really live near water.
Doesn't mean I can't have a yacht.
A land yacht?
What is the land equivalent to a yacht?
Like a car?
Party bus?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
I have a creek nearby. I could put a yacht in that.
A creek yacht. Yeah, that's true. That would work. And then you could listen to all the Steely Dan that you've been saving up for yacht rock season. Well, I have to admit, we've been in the 70s quite a lot lately, and I sure hope you've enjoyed it because I feel like it'll be a while before we're back. I just noticed, I looked at the list of episodes we've done, and I was like, why did we get so 70s-y? But it just felt right, you know what I mean?
It just felt right.
It felt right to do Bridge Over Troubled Water, and then we took a break with the Japanese House, but then we did Queen for 175, and then John Denver, we already talked about, was perfect for Thanksgiving, and now Steely Dan. We're just really in the early to mid-70s wheelhouse, I guess. But fear not. If that's not your thing, this is the last episode. You'll have to put up with that for a while.
Until next week.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Who knows? Next week is still 7 full days away, and a lot can happen in 7 days.
I could get a yacht.
You could. Oh, that'd be a great goal for your next 7 days. We'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, we could kick off that 7-day stretch by talking about Steely Dan. I don't know how I first discovered Steely Dan, to be honest.
I prefer Coppery Sam.
Copper Sam. Yeah. Isn't that the Statue of Liberty?
He's the police officer that's on my block, Copper Sam.
Right. Yeah. No, not Copper Sam. Steely Dan. I don't know when I first heard about Steely Dan, but I think the reason I decided to put him on the playlist, one album of the month, is because I was like, I feel like I heard a lot of people making fun of Steely Dan or like hating on yacht rock, and I was like, what's the deal? Can they be a band that people don't like? And I listened to this album. Asia was the first one I went to, and I was like, what is wrong with people that don't like this? I thought it was really fun. I thought it was cool. It was totally unexpected.
Steely Dan is surprisingly divisive.
Yeah, right. That's what doesn't compute with me.
Like, I almost feel like it's got a bit of a Nickelback situation going on here. Like,
you either are all in or all out.
Yeah, well, Steely Dan is known for being divisive, so I think it makes people want to be divisive.
Everyone wants to pick a side.
Just like Nickelback is known for being hated, and so people just naturally want to hate Nickelback.
Yeah.
But then also are like, you play a Nickelback song, they're like, this is pretty good. It's like, well, all right, well, then why do you hate them?
Yeah, justify yourself. Well, so far, I mean, I've listened to a handful of Steely Dan albums, and I haven't found one that I've been like, I feel like I'm firmly on one side of the divide.
The Great Divide.
That's the band. I know what side of that divide I'm on, too. Well, hopefully, if you listen to this episode and then check out this album, or if you've already done one or the other, then maybe you can make up your mind and figure out which side of the divide you're on, too. but it's important to be informed as you make your decision. So we will now inform you. Steely Dan is the brainchild of guitarist and bassist Walter Becker and vocalist and keyboardist Don Fagen. They met when they were students at Bard College in upstate New York in the mid-60s. Go figure, people at the college named after bards would go into music. Basically, Don Fagen was passing by a cafe one day, and he heard Walter Becker inside playing the guitar. And naturally, he walked right in and said, "Hey, I like this. Let's start a band together." And so they did. They started writing songs and playing together in bands, like a lot of bands. They tried jazz and rock and psychedelia. They tried to get into beatnik counterculture. Like, they worked all sorts of influences and styles into their music. And that's something they continue to do later on in their career. And I think maybe one of the reasons it's so divisive is because it's such a blend of flavors and genres in each of these Steely Dan songs. That makes it unique, but I guess not necessarily suited to one particular taste. In 1969, the duo moved to Brooklyn and to the Brill Building to try their hand at pop tunes and, like, canned hits, right? We've talked about the Brill Building before with, like, Carole King and the Gershwins and, you know, all their cookie-cutter piano roll pop music. Steely Dan started trying to do that. Becker actually later admitted, "We did it for the money." It was kind of like a soulless endeavor just to get some money. They actually ended up on the soundtrack for a Richard Pryor and Robert Downey Sr. movie called You Gotta Walk It Like You Talk It or You'll Lose That Beat, which is cool. I don't know much of Robert Downey Sr.'s work, but that's nifty. I've seen a few Richard Pryor movies. But later on, Don and Walter would go on to work alongside a familiar face that we've talked about before. A familiar face with a very big mustache and a human with a brain that works closely with intercontinental ballistic missiles. Jeff "Skunk" Baxter, the future Doobie Brother, helped the duo out while they were working together on a Linda Hoover record. You remember Skunk Baxter, right? Rocket scientist Skunk?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, well, he was on our Doobie Brothers episode, of course. I guess he wasn't in the Doobie Brothers on Toulouse Street that we did an episode on, but he was with the Doobie Brothers by the time they got to Minute by Minute, which we did a backtracks on. Yeah. But that connection between Steely Dan and Skunk Baxter would be integral in the coming years. They got really close, and Skunk would come work with them on a bunch of different records. And while Don and Walter did land a Barbra Streisand cut in the early days, their Brooklyn years were ultimately pretty unsuccessful. And it turns out they were actually outwriting their audience. As you can probably imagine, these early Becker-Fagen songs were a little too complex and too intricate to be what artists were looking to cut, to be cookie-cutter, Brill-building pop hits. They were really overshooting the mark. So they said, you know, we can do better on our own maybe. This is what we want to make. Let's find a way to make it. So they snagged Skunk Baxter and Denny Diaz on guitar. They got Jim Hodder on the drums and David Palmer as a vocalist. And they hightailed it all the way from New York City to Los Angeles with a brand new name, Steely Dan. Where did the name come from, you ask? What is Steely Dan? Well, that's a fun story, and I'm glad you asked. We can't tell you about it too specifically.
Yeah.
So you already know. It came from a novel straight out of the Beat generation. The novel is called Naked Lunch, and we'll just have to settle for saying that the Steely Dan is a steam-powered personal intimacy accessory. That's where their name comes from, which is wild, right? Whoever would have guessed? Not me. I think that makes this name belong in our Hall of Name. Even though the name itself isn't wild and kind of rolls right off the tongue, just the origin story is hard to believe.
Yeah.
But working together in Los Angeles, the group's first official single as Steely Dan was called Dallas, and it came out on the ABC Records label in 1972. It was another rough time. The band remembers the song as, quote, Stinko, and the song has never even been reissued beyond promotional and early stock copies. They made a few physical records of the Stinko song, and then they discontinued it forever. Their first proper album was called Can't Buy a Thrill, and it came out the same year. It actually did a lot better than those Stinko demos. Can't Buy a Thrill went to number 17 on the top LPs and tape chart in the US, and within a year it would go gold. So that's a big step up. It was a big step in the right direction. They also started touring a lot too and began developing a really, really devoted fan base that would kind of help carry them through the years and stick by them. Their second record, Countdown to Ecstasy, came out in 1973, another record that I have ranked and scored. And boy, wow, it's a fun one. It didn't do as well as their debut, but I think it's come to be remembered a lot more fondly with age, because it's got hits like My Old School and Bodhisattva and Showbiz Kids. A couple of big singles on there if you are familiar with Steely Dan. And Countdown to Ecstasy is actually the first time Steely Dan managed to crack into the Billboard Hot 100. However, the band themselves didn't like the record much because they recorded it while they were on the road, and so they felt like they couldn't devote all the time and the attention to it that they would have otherwise wanted. Steely Dan is another band that is kind of like perfectionist with their work, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we just had that the other week with Queen and Simon and Garfunkel too. All these 70s bands were really putting in the work to get it right. But then after that came Pretzel Logic, Katie Lied. Both of those records produced their most successful single of all time, Ricky Don't Lose That Number. That song landed at number 4 on the Hot 100. And that is about the time Steely Dan picks up percussionist Royce Jones, and they recruit the incomparable Michael McDonald to join the group. You remember Michael McDonald, also on Minute by Minute. He's a newbie doobie.
One of the newbie doobies?
Uh-huh. And I'll just say right now, I know he's not like an integral part of Steely Dan necessarily, but Michael McDonald does do some work on Asia, and I hope the Mixtaper doesn't have any facts or spins about him, because I have read his autobiography, and it's quite good. But that's a fair warning to him if he's listening. But also at this time, Steely Dan even gets some session work from Toto's Jeff Porcaro and David Paich, which is cool. We did a whole episode on Toto. Love him. But Don and Walter were tough on the band. Like I said, that perfectionist tendency reared its ugly head. Sometimes they would make band members do as many as 40 takes for a single track. And they realized that touring like they were doing just was not really conducive to making the best music they could make, right? You can't do 40 takes of a single part while you're on the road in an unfamiliar studio. And so they pretty much just fired the whole band. Well, either they fired everybody or members just walked away when they realized they were being underutilized. So they pretty much just picked up session players and close friends. That's kind of what Steely Dan turns into in the middle of their career. They did their last performance as a touring band, really, for like decades, in July of 1974, for this band that formed in 69. I mean, that's like 5 years of Steely Dan touring, and then they took a long time off. But of course, they're still doing albums. The Royal Scam came out in 1976, never really produced a hit single in the US, and that's a little rough. But in 1977, boy, they really struck gold with their next record, their sixth. It's the jazzy, funky, exceptionally tight 7-track record, Asia, the one we're talking about today. And again, since the band really wasn't much more of an entity outside of like a Fagen Becker duo act at this point, they brought in almost 40 session players to add unique sound and flair to Asia. 40 different instrumentalists, and they play clavinets and police whistles, marimbas, vibraphones, percussion instruments, synths, horns, a ton of backing vocals. I mean, this is an album made by committee. Like, who is Steely Dan, really? If you listen to this album, it's a lot of people. They named the record Asia, AJA, because Don Fagen knew a Korean woman by that name who married his high school friend's brother, which is like such a distant connection, right? That would be like me naming a record after your sister's boyfriend. That seems wild to me.
Yeah, that is pretty wild.
Yeah, but that's where they got Asia from. And it's a good album title. It's short, to the point.
Pointy.
Yeah, this is a pointy album title. Now, like all Steely Dan albums, Asia's a little more involved musically, right? Lots of unique inversions and chord progressions, a lot of jazz chords. It's not really your top 40 pop hit kind of stuff. They did their best to weave a jazz influence into all these songs, so time signatures and key changes end up being really fun. It's just so interesting, and for that reason, actually, Asia is kind of one of those records, I mean, as Steely Dan is one of those bands that are key players in the evolution of the genre of yacht rock. This is like where we're headed. And to their credit, I mean, it made making albums difficult, but their persnickety perfectionism also really helped them a lot too. They employed more than a dozen people on the production team to get the sound on Asia just right. Because of its wide array of sounds and the quality of its production, right, there's so many different sounds here and they're all done so well. Asia is actually one of the most used test records that people use to set up their high-fidelity audio gear, which I thought was really cool. You know, like speakers and headphones and stuff. If you're setting up a recording studio or a home sound system or whatever, people will put Asia through the sound system and put all their new equipment through its paces by playing this album over and over and fine-tuning it to Asia to make sure it sounds great. Rolling Stone's Barry Walters praised the album's surreal sonic perfection, its melodic and harmonic complexity. Music so technically demanding, its creators had to call in A-list session players to realize the sounds they heard in their heads but could not play, even on the instruments they had mastered. Which, like, what a review, right? They're writing music so complicated, they can't even make it.
That's pretty complicated.
Right. That's hard to conceptualize.
I don't know. I think it's pretty easy to conceptualize. I can think of a lot of things that are too complicated for me to create.
I mean, I guess when you put it like that, that's true. Especially, like, in the realm of visual art. Mm-hmm. I think I can probably visualize art that I would make, and I just can't do it.
I think our podcast's logo is proof of that.
Well, no, it's good now, but the original draft was not.
Yeah, but the one I came up with.
Oh, the one you came up with was pretty bad. Yeah, that's true. But we got there. It all worked out. Maybe it is easier to conceptualize than I thought. Asia came out on September 23rd, 1977, and it was a pretty instant classic in the Dan's catalog. Critics at Rolling Stone said the conceptual framework of their music has shifted from the pretext of rock and roll towards a smoother, awesomely clean and calculated mutation of various rock, pop, and jazz idioms, while their lyrics remain as pleasantly obtuse and cynical as ever, which is wonderful. I think it is. I mean, musically very complex and lyrically kind of a brick wall. I mean, you'll see it reflected in my scores at the end of the episode, but it's really quite a contrast. Asia produced 3 charting singles out of its 7 tracks. That's a pretty strong percentage. But the 3 singles that charted were Peg, Deacon Blues, and Josie, which went to number 11, 19, and 26, respectively, in the US. Asia, the album as a whole, ended up peaking at number 3 on the Billboard 200, and it charted in 6 other countries as well. It won a Grammy in 1978 for Best Engineered Recording, non-classical. So that's cool. Today, Asia is certified gold in the UK and 2 times platinum in both Canada and the United States. And it entered the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2003. It's been ranked as high as number 63 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list, like top 100. And also, Asia has been preserved in the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry.
We talked about that quite a bit, but it's been a minute.
It has been just a minute since we've talked about that. But I think this is a fitting album, especially if it's like such an exemplary like moment in recorded music. Like from an engineering standpoint, I definitely understand why this is in there. So they put out Asia, brand new hit record, brand new outlook on life. Let's put together another touring band, or maybe try to. They had to actually cancel their tour in support of Asia because their touring musicians started to compare their paychecks and did not like what they were seeing. So, oof. They do, though, manage to follow greatness up with more greatness in the form of their 1978 record, Gaucho. It was a rocky road to make that record, and much like Bridge Over Troubled Water for Simon and Garfunkel, it led to the band's eventual decade-long hiatus. But really, truly, it's another masterpiece. And when I say it was a rocky road to make the record, I mean, like, so rocky. An engineer straight up erased most of their favorite song from the record on accident. They had to build a $150,000 drum machine basically from scratch. They named it Wendell. MCA Records bought their label ABC, and the release got delayed. Walter Becker's girlfriend died of a drug overdose, and he was sued for $17 million. Then he got hit by a taxi and landed in the hospital, so he had to work on the record over the phone. Then they got sued for copyright infringement on the title track. I mean, it was a rocky road. It's like a cursed album. No wonder they needed a decade off after Gaucho.
Yeah, I don't know how much more you know about that, but the Mixtaper may have more to say about just how cursed that was.
I'm excited to hear it. I don't have anything more to say about it. But yeah, cursed record aside, I mean, a hit's a hit. So they went through the ringer and came up with another winning record. Gaucho went to number 9 on the Billboard 200, and it earned the band another Best Engineered Recording Grammy and 2 nominations for Album of the Year and Best Pop Performance. And that's the point where they disbanded from 1981 to 1993. It took a dozen years off. But they did mess around with some solo stuff. And when Fagen went into the studio for his second solo record, Kamakiriad, he brought Walter on to produce. And that's all it took. They kind of decided to get the Steely Dan show back on the road. So they resumed touring, and they put out a live record after the tour. They got to work on a proper Steely Dan studio album in 1997. That record would take them 3 years to make. It would be 2000's Two Against Nature, which would win the group, just a whopping 4 Grammys, including an Album of the Year Grammy, actually, that beat out such hits as Radiohead's Kid A.
Easy to do.
Which is one of my top 10s, and Connor gave it a 2. But it beat out Kid A for Album of the Year. It beat out Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP for Record of the Year. There was some stiff competition in 2000, but Steely Dan rose above it all. Then they put out Everything Must Go in 2003, which would end up actually being the last proper Steely Dan album, as Walter Becker passed away from esophageal cancer in 2017. Fagen has continued touring, but also he ran into legal trouble with royalties and rights and had some issues with Becker's widow early on. Lately, though, you can find Steely Dan on tour with groups like the Doobie Brothers and the Eagles, and that means another Don is in their midst. Go figure. Don Henley, Don Felder, Don Fagen. Why are the Eagles so Don heavy? Beats me.
Beats me too.
Well, as for the awards and accolades, over their 9-album career, Steely Dan won 3 Grammy Awards on 9 nominations. In 2001, Steely Dan made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've also been ranked as one of the best duos in music. Rolling Stone put them at number 15, and VH1 put them at number 82 on their list of the 100 greatest musical artists of all time. To date, Steely Dan has sold more than 40 million albums around the world, so that's a Steely darn successful run. And that's where we're at.
Welcome. We're here.
We are here, and now you can begin to take sides on where you stand on the Steely Dan divide. You can't fully do it yet, but you've got a base knowledge now that should serve you well.
The divide is merely a crack right now.
Right.
Let's grow the crack into a crevice.
Right. Right, we'll make things more divisive with Factor Spin. Get the Mixtaper on out here.
Hey, it's me, the Mixtaper.
Hello, Mixtaper. How are you?
I'm Steely Dan.
Sometimes you come in and you say the same things Connor's already said.
Did he already make the SpongeBob reference?
Yeah, he did.
He stole that from me.
I don't know how many people even get the SpongeBob reference.
Well,
the episode of SpongeBob is decades old.
Timeless.
If you say so.
Timeless, just like Steely Dan.
That is true.
Which leads me to our first fact.
Ooh, first fact time. It's your 177th first fact. Just about.
Wow. They once tried to write an opera.
I've heard this one before. Although not really. I think you lied about Rascal Flatts trying to write a play like Romeo and Juliet, but I don't think it was an opera.
Mm-hmm.
Although we have had opera writers, right?
We did a whole episode on the Phantom of the Opera.
Halsey, we lied about writing musicals, right? The 24-hour musical writing contests that Halsey would not do because it was a spin.
Right. Yep.
But you're right. I don't think we have anything quite like an opera. So Steely Dan tries to write an opera. And you said once tried, so it did not go well?
It did not.
What's the circumstance? They just do it for fun? Or was there a reason to write an opera?
Does one need a reason to write an opera?
Well, no, but I'm assuming they were motivated by something.
Their love of time travel.
They wrote a time travel opera?
Time travel rock opera.
Really? Wow.
Which is why I said that them being timeless led into my first fact.
Got it. Oh, that does make sense. Yeah. What's it about?
Time travel.
Okay, but what's the plot? How far along the process did they get? Did they have a plot and a storyboard and songs or anything like that?
It was a time-traveling jazz musician who explores the past and future of music.
Interesting. Now, how's that sound? Does it get all futuristic musically? What's the deal?
Well, if you want to know how it sounds, just listen to The Night Fly and... Boy, I wish I was paying attention when you said it earlier. Gaucho?
Yeah.
Gaucho? Guacamole?
Guacamole? No. So it does make it into some releases, right? Songs from the musical?
Yeah, some of the songs from the musical were reworked and used in those 2 albums.
Interesting.
But to answer your earlier question, they worked on it for several months, writing songs and developing a loose storyline before ultimately abandoning it.
Yeah, well, what made them abandon it? What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
It was too complicated for its own good.
Now that I can kind of believe. Listen to all the music they make that's not opera style, that is too complicated, maybe for its own good, but definitely at least very complicated. It would not be hard for them to go overboard on a time travel opera, is what I'm saying. But they kept the best parts. Interesting. When did this happen?
In the late 1970s.
I see. Good answer. I don't think I believe this.
What would have been a bad answer?
Well, sometime after Gaucho came out.
Oh, okay. You don't believe it? How dare.
No, I think this is a spin.
How dare?
Well, I'm sorry. It feels like I've seen this B plot on a TV show at some point of somebody who has to write and perform a very lengthy space opera, much to the chagrin of the protagonists who are forced to sit there and listen to it. I definitely have seen that in a TV show or movie or something. And not that that's where you got your inspiration from. I just don't quite buy it.
Fair enough. Then hey, put it down before you accidentally break it, because then you'll be forced to buy it.
That's true. I don't want to buy it. I don't buy it. I'll put it down and lock in.
Look with your eyes, not your hands.
I'm locking in spin.
You're locking in. A point for me. This is a true fact.
Ah, darn. Of course they try to write an opera. I just can't picture Steely Dan as like a rock opera band at all.
Yeah, well, neither could they. They said that time travel and operas don't really fit with their style of music.
It doesn't. It was so like not yacht rocky, so not anything that I've heard from Steely Dan ever.
Apparently, I mean, if you've listened to Gaucho or The Nightfly, then you've heard some of it.
Well, but taken out of the context of an opera, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. Also, their song Pretzel Logic is also about time travel.
Well, that does make sense.
Before that was like their first dive into time travel.
Yeah, in 1974. They do sing a lot of songs about time, though. And I mean, even some of the songs on this album are a little bit like time and space travel inspired, slightly. But again, their lyrics are just something else. So that's a tough one. That's a bummer. And it definitely is the plot to a show, right? I've definitely seen that. Exactly.
I have no idea.
Where somebody writes a really sci-fi themed musical and they have to sit through it.
I don't know. Probably that exists. Seems like a thing that would exist.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to bring out the Spin It Mystery department for our next fact.
The Spin It Mystery department. Is there another mystery to be solved? That's not good.
Yeah. They were the victims of an unsolved crime.
Uh-oh. What kind of crime? Murder? Arson?
If they were the victim of murder, I think we got problems.
Well, we would. Yeah, that's true. That's why no one solved it.
No, this is the crime of theft.
Okay, so they've got something stolen from them.
Indeed.
What was it?
The master tapes of Gaucho.
Oh.
Guachu.
Bless you. Now that's interesting because I happen to know things about this album that kind of reinforce that. So they're missing masters, right?
Yeah. Well, you already went into a laundry list of issues they had with this album.
I did. Yeah, with the car accidents and the actual deaths and the suing and the
recording of second arrangement getting erased and
cursed. That album is. Yeah. And so you're saying that even once they finished the album, the masters got stolen?
Yeah, it was during the final stages of production. The master tapes for the title track actually mysteriously vanished from the studio.
That's interesting. When did they realize this? How did it get discovered?
So they're recording at Soundworks Studios in New York.
And
they're like, haha, the master tapes for our title track. They're missing.
No good.
They're our only existing copy.
Also no good.
They have our, master tapes. They have the highest quality audio.
Yeah, well, that's another good point.
We have to now re-record everything from scratch.
Surely they don't do that and record the entire title track from scratch?
They re-record the title track, which required hiring new session musicians again, or like bringing them back, rehiring them, and recreating every part of the arrangement, which led to Gaucho. I've already forgotten it again.
Gaucho?
Gaucho became one of the most expensive albums that Steely Dan ever produced.
Wow. Because they had to re-record the entire track from scratch. That's interesting.
There was suspected involvement, rumors that spread that the theft might have been an act of sabotage.
Well, who would want to sabotage them?
Former employees, or maybe someone involved with the production that was disgruntled.
Now you got to keep your people gruntled.
Others actually believed it might have been a rival band attempting to delay the album's release.
Interesting.
But none of these theories were ever confirmed, and the theft remains unsolved.
Nah, that's wild. So yeah, the mystery department will have to get on that. Here's my biggest hang-up for this. They must just have really bad luck with title track masters, because Asia, the title track for this album, is also missing its master. In the late 90s, they were looking for it to do like a remix, remaster, reissue, and they couldn't find the masters for Asia either.
Interesting.
But it didn't happen before the album came out, I don't think. I don't think they had to re-record the entire track. I think they just found it out decades after the fact that the master was gone. So I don't know whether to believe you and say that it happened twice, or whether you found the thing about Asia and like transposed it onto a different later album. That's tough. But I think I'm going to choose to believe for now.
Believe for now. Believe for now as if you're not going to find out one way or the other in like less than 30 seconds.
Yes, exactly. I think that these two things are related. I think that I know that the Asia Masters went missing. Maybe they went missing at the same time as the Gaucho Masters. And there was just like a Grand Theft Master.
GTM.
And they just didn't realize about the Asia one until later. Perhaps. So I think I'm going to say that this one's maybe a fact.
Maybe a fact?
I think maybe they were victims of an unsolved master thief.
There were known security lapses at the studio.
Well, that's a bummer. Why would you go to a studio with known security lapses?
Well, I guess it was known after the fact when the investigation happened. But
seems like a preventable choice.
Locking in fact?
Yeah, I suppose I will.
This is a point for you. This is a true fact.
Thank goodness. I was not so sure that that was going to be the case. Do you think they're related? The two master thieves?
I kind of think they might be.
Someone's out here only stealing title tracks.
Maybe they stole them at the same time, and everybody was just so focused on the new album that nobody even looked at or noticed the missing old album.
I think that doesn't sound unlikely. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to choose to believe for now.
The legendary Title Track Bandit.
The Title Track Bandit strikes again. Brutal, though. Man, it's got to suck to have your master stolen, especially when you're so close to the end of the record. So then no one's ever heard the original version of Gaucho. I mean, except for the band and the people that worked on it, and the thief and all his friends.
All of his friends that come to the parties.
That's right. Imagine, like you just invite people over. Hey guys, we're going to listen to this Steely Dan tape that I stole.
You have like a secret room in your house that...
No, you have a secret yacht.
Oh!
You go out in international water,
wow.
And on the secret yacht, you listen to the secret stolen yacht rock.
Why do you think I want a yacht?
Uh-oh. You want one too? Connor already wants a yacht.
I mean, why do you think Connor wants a yacht?
You have a blimp. It's like a yacht of the sky.
Hey, I may be a supervillain, but I would never steal.
No.
Unless it's a blimp.
Well, we don't need to get into that.
Blimps are the yachts of the sky.
That's what I just said.
I did not recognize you saying that.
You were too caught up in your own dreams of splendor.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, the Spin and Mystery Department, your new job is to track down the Title Track Bandit. Who knows where he'll strike next? We're off to a 50-50 start.
Yeah, we got a couple song facts coming up here.
Okay.
Let's give the Mystery Department a break before they come back, though.
Oh, stay tuned. Wait in the wings.
And let's talk about video games.
Okay, sure. What video games do you want to talk about?
The one that they wrote a song for.
What video game did Steely Dan write a song for?
The game was called Galactic Traveler.
No, not again with the space travel stuff.
Whoa. Time travel, space travel, very different.
Well, that's true. I mean, we all travel through time and space. Well, tell me more about this video game. What platforms is it for? When did it come out? What's the gameplay like? Is Mario in it?
Galactic Traveler is a futuristic arcade game released in 1982.
Ooh, okay. Around the time Steely Dan's doing their hiatus.
The game was released in 1982.
Yeah, I'm sure they did work on it before that. I'm not discounting this immediately because of that.
Oh, okay.
This isn't a Credence situation.
Gotcha.
Yet.
Galactic Traveler was a space exploration and adventure game where players navigated through different galaxies, encountering alien species and cosmic phenomena. It was known for its advanced graphics and immersive storyline for its time.
For its time being 1982, when its advanced graphics probably looked like garbage today, and its modern storyline is probably 8 minutes of gameplay. What do you do? Is it like a shooter? Is it a platformer? A racing game?
I think it's... I don't know.
I mean, if you played it in an arcade, those are probably your most likely configurations.
Yeah, I really don't know what the gameplay was like.
Maybe it's a fighting game.
That would make sense if you're like encountering alien species and stuff. Like it's probably like one of those scroll shooters or whatever.
Yeah, sure. So Steely Dan writes a song for this game. Mm-hmm. Are they the only ones? Is there like one song in the game and it's Steely Dan?
I don't know if it's the only song, but it's the main song.
Like the theme song? Mm-hmm. Okay, how'd they land this gig?
It says for the game's soundtrack, which would imply there's more than one song, but...
It would.
Again, it's an arcade game, so there can't be that many songs.
That's true. What's their song called or about?
It's a track titled Cosmic Journey.
Sounds fitting.
The song blended their signature yacht rock style with electronic synth elements to match the game's space theme.
That also makes sense. Did they make like royalties off of it? I don't know how video game.
I assume they got some sort of money. I don't know if you get royalties. Like every time a child puts a quarter in, Steely Dan gets a penny.
Hey, that's honestly a great rate.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, the track plays during the game's opening sequence and at the main menu.
Interesting. Is it identifiable as Steely Dan? Like, is there singing on it, or is it just like beeps and boops and 8-bit?
I don't know. I haven't heard it. The song was only used like for the arcade game and its soundtrack. It was never on any of their albums or anything.
So they never put it out.
They never put it out. Yeah, it was only a rare piece of Steely Dan musical catalog. It was a limited arcade distribution.
I like this a lot. I want to believe it.
But do you? That's the question.
Steely Dan, again, they just make pretty complicated music. Is that what kids are going to want to hear in an arcade game? Are they even going to care? I don't know. I think I believe this. I kind of am leaning fact. My biggest hang-up, ironically, I guess, is that it's in 1982 after they kind of had called it off. Which I know I said wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know when they. I don't know when they did the work for this. Just that the game came out in 1982.
Yeah, and it takes time to get a game together. But music's one of the last things you're probably going to put in your game.
Probably.
But if you want to commission it, you'd ask early.
Who's to say? If I was if I was making a video game, soundtrack would be number 1 on my list before anything else.
Number 1 before gameplay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before anything.
This is why you're not a game developer.
Don't even have a game yet. Give me music.
Just give me game music. Just give me a game soundtrack and I'll be set.
I'll design a game around it.
That'd be actually kind of fun. I think this is probably a fact.
A fact.
I think I'm going to go ahead and say fact. It's really interesting. I mean, it sounds pretty cool and I hope they did it.
This is a hope crusher because this is a spin.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, you only let me know like 8 times that you were worried. You weren't sure this was a fact.
Yeah, I wasn't. Well, how'd you come up with this? Tell me more. What's the game like?
Oh, it's not even a real game.
Not even a real game? You made up the game and didn't even tell me what the gameplay was?
Yeah, no, I just made that up. I'm a game developer.
You really did. You really did develop a game around the soundtrack. You just told me what you did. Wow.
I'll be honest, I spent a lot of time coming up with a good name that was like basic enough but yet believable.
It was believable. I did truly believe it.
And then a track title. I came up with all this stuff. The one thing I didn't think about was that you would ask what the gameplay was like.
I thought of everything about the game except for the game. Bummer, but well done.
Thank you.
There's a very creative fact for you. That's a shame, because I was going to look up what the gameplay was like afterwards. I was like, this game sounds cool. Space and time travel, 1980s.
You're into retro games, too.
With an acclaimed story? Sign me up.
All right, mystery department. Break's over. Come on, back out into the field.
Yeah, let's get them out here one more time. If they haven't already solved the first crime, maybe they can solve the second one.
Well, it's not a crime.
Okay.
But it is a mystery, or more of a secret.
A mystery is just a legal crime.
Not always.
Crime is just an illegal mystery. Maybe that's the better way.
Yeah. They had a secret song.
A lot of secrets this time around.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Steely Dan secret song?
The not-so-secret song now, but secret at the time song, was a hidden song only played at concerts in California.
Oh, really? Why is that?
It is a, quote, gift to California fans.
That's really cool.
Though they never gave a clear reason for the tradition. But anytime they performed in California, they would play a song called California Confessions.
Ooh. What kind of stuff was confessed in the song?
Unknown. The song was never officially recorded or released.
Ever. Even still. Like, not bootlegs? Mm-hmm. Not nothing?
I couldn't find anything on the internet, but not saying somebody didn't. I don't know, did they have a way to record concerts in the 70s?
Yeah, what are you talking about? We listened to a B.B. King live album from like 1950.
I meant just like fans. Like, you know, like today people just put it on Snapchat.
That's true. Yeah, they didn't put it all on Snapchat back in the 80s.
The song's lyrics are said to be a tribute to the unique culture of California, where the band spent a lot of time recording.
Seems true. But why not record and release it? That's really cool, though. I guess I answered my own question, because that'd be really a fun thing to do and have for your audiences. Did they have any other secret songs in other places?
We should do a secret podcast episode.
Oh, for who? How?
I don't know,
We should just make one in the vault. Maybe we make a podcast episode and we just publish it every like first Wednesday of the month. So like you have 24 hours to listen to it before it's gone until the first Wednesday of the next month.
Oh. 24 hours feels like too long of a window.
Really? Okay, like an hour then.
No, I'm thinking 2-hour window, but a different 2-hour window every, like it's the same day, but you never know when in the 24-hour day the 2-hour window will be.
Oh, so the podcast episode just keeps coming and going.
Yeah, so like every first Wednesday of the month, 2-hour window somewhere on that Wednesday.
I think that's not a bad idea.
Well, what do you think about this not bad idea? California Confession.
Confession. I think it's also a great idea. I think it's really cool, and it's another situation where I hope it's true. I don't know what to think about it, really. I think I'm going to say spin.
He's going spin.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go spin, even though I love this idea.
Any particular reason?
Because it's a cool idea. Who wouldn't love this? Oh, you mean, why do I think it's a spin?
Yeah. Insane.
I know. I think they would have probably recorded it. Something, right? There's no way. I don't know. It feels like it would be, word would spread, and then other places would be like, what the heck?
I mean, obviously word did spread because we know about it, but that's why I said it's a not so secret song.
That's true. It's like Hannah Montana taking off her wig at the concert and showing everybody in her hometown that she's not Hannah Montana.
Yeah. Everybody's like, we'll keep your secret. It's like, no, you won't.
Baloney. No, you won't. Everyone will tell that you played California Confessions.
All right, so locking in spin?
Yeah.
Locking in spin. You just locked in a 50-50. This is a spin.
Well, that's unfortunate because it's cool.
It is cool.
What's the deal?
Also made up.
Yeah. Does someone do this?
No. I mean, I don't know, maybe. But I guess I shouldn't just blanket statement say no. Not that I'm aware of.
Well.
I just made it up.
It's a fun idea. You made up a lot of stuff today.
I know.
Galactic video game titles and cosmic freeways and California Confession.
Thought that was a good title.
It was, but that's kind of what gave it away too.
Well, I was hoping the fact that I did them back to back, you'd be like, he wouldn't make up titles for two facts
Twice in a row. I don't put anything past you much.
Smart move. Sorry, mystery department for the wild goose chase on that one.
Yeah, it's okay. I think the bandit will be enough to keep them occupied for quite some time.
Now, every time that we find a band that lost or like had something happen to one of their masters, we're gonna be like, was it the bandit?
Right? I know, it could be. The bandit strikes again.
Well, that's all I got this week.
Wow, what a fun week. These were a lot of good steely facts. I enjoyed these.
I'm surprised you didn't go spin on the unsolved crime.
Why?
Because something was stolen from them and their name is Steely Dan.
Oh my gosh, it didn't even cross my mind.
I kind of thought you would talk yourself into spin on that one.
Didn't even think about it. If I had, no shot I would have believed that. You're right.
I really thought, I was really disappointed when you were like, and the fact that like it was tied to something else, I was like, come on, he's gonna go spin, and then you didn't.
Yeah, I guess I just got lucky on that one by being right.
Man, the one time you didn't think of the pun.
I didn't. It didn't even cross my mind a little bit. But that's okay. At least Steely Dan is safe from future bandits.
I mean, grave robbers.
Well, most future bandits. One thing I know is I'm not safe from you in future rounds of Factor Spin.
Yeah, tune in next week to see James not be safe.
Yeah, as usual.
And until then, yeah.
Oh, wow. Welcome back, Connor. Steely Con, as he's known around these parts.
Actually, it's Connor Dan.
Connor Dan?
It popped in my head when you said Steely Con. And
Well, I'm surprised you didn't try and say Steely Con at the beginning of the episode.
I went for the SpongeBob pun or joke instead.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk about this album art on Asia.
Aja.
Nope. It's a very mysterious and intriguing and shadowy photo of a woman.
It's mysterious and intriguing and mysterious.
Yeah, it is truly. All three of those things. It's a photo of Japanese model and actress Sayoko Yamaguchi.
I gotta ask, is it on purpose that the J in Asia is like shaped exactly like the picture?
You know, I've never thought about it, but maybe. Because like her face kind of makes the dot and the stripe down her back kind of makes the J shape.
Yeah, and it's even like the little stripe where her like shoulder would be. It's like the little jut out at the top of the J.
Yeah, that has to be Surely that's intentional.
It feels like it should be, but I couldn't decide if that was my pattern recognition brain trying to put a pattern where there wasn't one.
I don't know. It definitely seems like that's the case. Good thought. I do like the way that it plays with shadow and color, though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Although, it's another instance where I don't know where the heck we'll hide our logo in it. You'll just have to tune in and find out to the cover photo of this episode to see how I pulled that one off.
Just replace her face with part of our logo.
Actually, that's not bad. Maybe you'll see it like that. I hate to just like replace her face. That feels rude.
Yeah.
It's about my only option. We'll see. What do you think? It's mysterious and intriguing and mysterious.
That's what I think.
I think it fits the vibes of the song, Asia. Mm-hmm. I don't know how well it goes with the rest of the album as a whole, but definitely it hits the nail on the head for the title track.
I mean, it's got a black background. That goes with Black Cow.
That is true, I guess. And yeah, that's where we got to start off. Black Cow.
Maybe her name is Peg.
Well, it's not. It's Sayoko Yamaguchi.
No, not like the...
Oh, but like the character that she's portraying.
Yeah, but maybe like this character's name. Yeah. And maybe she's home at last. It has news to tell Josie.
Hey, maybe, perhaps, it is truly the perfect embodiment of everything in this album, and we just don't realize it.
Other than maybe Deacon Blues. Not trying to fit that one in. Not really any blue going on here.
No, not much blue. Maybe she's just learned to work the saxophone.
Maybe she's just sad.
Maybe she is just sad. She does look a little sad.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Anyway, the album kicks off with the song Black Cow. I don't know if you knew this. I sure didn't know this. Do you know what a black cow is? Not the animal.
I was just about to...
I know I had to get out in front of that before you could say that.
Well, there was always a thing that my dad did growing up that was like, oh, you know, chocolate milk comes from brown cows and strawberry milk comes from pink cows.
Yeah, that's a common joke.
And silly things like that. So when you were like, oh, what's a black cow? I was going to say, it's what you get black milk from. That was going to be a joke mainly only from me.
Yeah.
Is a black cow like a secret?
It's not a secret, no.
Oh, okay.
But that is a good...
Feels like it could be a secret.
It does, doesn't it? Like, I'm gonna tell you a black cow, like a secret. I don't know how you'd use it in context, but I like the speculation. No, it turns out it's way less cool than that. The black cow is a nickname for what's basically just a root beer float.
Oh, I actually knew that.
You'd like go to a soda parlor and you'd order a black cow, and
yeah, I knew that actually.
I had no idea. Didn't seem like you knew that when you didn't know it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to pull that out of anything, but after you said it.
Interesting. So you've had a black cow. I mean, I have too. I just didn't know that it was one.
Yeah.
Sipping on a root beer float.
Oh, apparently a black cow is also a symbol of fertility, abundance, grounding, stability, strength, endurance, and longevity.
Well, that's not the root beer float. That sounds like an actual black cow, like the animal, like the symbolism attributed to the animal.
Oh.
Not a root beer float is like symbolic of fertility and prosperity.
I don't know. When I have a root beer float, I feel pretty prosperous.
It is a good feeling. Honestly, there's no drink quite like it. We need to make more floats.
I mean, a place near me has a lot of like craft sodas that they put in the float form, and it's great.
Nice. Yeah, well, Don Fagen says the song starts out with the guy talking about this girl he's involved with. She's sitting at the counter, drinking, of course, a root beer float. And he said he describes her behavior and habits. And then out of that, you begin to see her character and their relationship. Self-explanatory.
Oh, I'm actually more on point than I thought I was.
On point how?
Look at that. Black cows as a spirit animal. They can be nourishment and fertility, like I said, but they can also mean secrecy.
Secrecy. The black cow is a big secret.
Yeah. Secrecy has long been associated with the color black, and a black cow is frequently viewed as such.
Secret cow.
It can represent the need to keep certain things hidden or to keep a low profile.
That's interesting. Wow, that's good symbolism, because in the song, I mean, she's just sitting at this counter and he's watching her every move, like micro-analyzing her things, like to try and figure out her secrets and get down to like the core of their relationship. Interesting.
The core of where she got that root beer float.
Yeah, probably from the counter where she's sitting. Rudy's. She's in Rudy's.
She's like, where'd you get that? And she's like ignoring him because he's being creepy and staring at her. And he's like, fine, keep your secrets.
Right. And then he can't cry anymore.
Yeah.
What did you think of the song, though? Sonically, having never experienced Steely Dan before, how's Black Cow grab you?
I like, drink your big black cow.
And get out. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. And I like the saxophone.
You're going to get a lot of good saxophone on this record.
Yeah.
And brass instruments just in general. There's some maybe trombones in here.
No steel drums.
No steel drums, that's true.
A little disappointed for a band called Steely Dan.
You won't hear any steel drums on this whole album.
Felt like steel drums was the way to go.
Yeah. I don't think that would serve the song very well.
No, probably not.
Oh, but just, I love the way they do the voices, the vocal harmonies on all these parts. It's pretty good. I really love the musical complexity, and that's the thing that is just a Steely Dan staple that I could talk about on every one of these tracks ad nauseum. It's just so good. I love that it always feels natural, right? They use these really complicated chords that you don't hear a lot, but they structure them in a way that it feels really natural to listen to. That's why they win easy listening Grammys, because it's easy to listen to this. There's just such a nice variety of instruments on this song, and I think they blend together really well. Nothing's like stepping on any toes.
No toe stepping, which is good because cows are heavy. They can crush toes. You just wear steel-toed boots.
They could smash your steel-toed boots. And it's a big black cow, too. It's not even a small one. Drink your big black cow.
Dude, I always get a big black cow.
This song, it does make me want to root beer float now that I know what the song's all about. I want to go get one.
I had 2 last week.
You had 2 root beer floats last week?
I had 2 big black cows last week.
That's amazing.
Actually, only one of them was a big black cow. The other one was a big red cow.
Did you make it with Big Red soda?
it was a craft cherry soda, but yeah.
Oh, I see. A cherry cow. Your cherry
Drink your
cow
cherry.
and get out of here. It is just so clean. I don't know. I just can't get over like the way that they separate the instruments into their little sonic frequencies. Everyone gets its own place to live, and man, it's just constructed well. Now, this is an album that's only got 7 tracks, but it's still a full-length album, and that means all these tracks are pretty long. I mean, the shortest one is still 4 minutes, and most of them get into the 5-7 range. Does it get old for you? Do you ever get burnt out on a single song? At least maybe not for Black Cow. It's the first one, right? Still got some gas in the tank.
Yeah, we're fine. 2 back-to-back 7+ minute songs. That was an interesting choice.
It was an interesting choice to put them back-to-back. However, what a strong first half of the record.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to it. But after Black Cow does come the title track, Asia.
Title track!
Absolutely. And once again, just like the album, named after a friend's brother's wife, Fagen said, "We thought that was a good name, a very romantic sort of image." And he said the song is about the sort of tranquility that can come from a quiet relationship with a beautiful woman. So that's cool. Asia, the song, the speaker is stressed out by life, all these things that are happening. And so he turns to Asia, this woman, for solace and for comfort. He leans heavily into that relationship to find peace. And I think sonically the song reflects that in a lot of ways. It's a lot softer, a lot gentler than Black Cow, which has punchy bass and aggressive drums. You won't find quite as much of that on Asia. This song mentions banyan trees. We talked about those on our Machine Gun Kelly episode. He had an interlude about banyan trees.
Yeah, yep.
Fagen calls Asia a journey in time and space, which is one of those things that made me really suspicious about a time and space themed musical, because I knew he said that about this song.
Mm-hmm.
Don sings the lead vocals on this one, and all of them, and he plays the synth. Becker plays the guitar. And Asia also features vocals from Eagles bassist Timothy B. Schmidt. It's a really cool song. They actually laid down the entire rhythm section for Asia, the song, in just a single day. And all the session musicians they brought in hadn't even rehearsed beforehand. Like, super talented crew. Guitarist Dennis Diaz talked a lot about it, and I found some cool quotes from him. He said, "Its very existence is a contradiction. I mean, when have you ever heard a song on a rock and roll record that absolutely cannot be played on a guitar?" Mm-hmm. He said that there were clusters where the notes were so close together that you can't stretch your fingers far enough to get all the notes out at the same time, and open voicings that are so wide apart you can't reach all the notes. It's again another case of serious ambition, and Don and Walter writing songs that physically cannot be played. And it's just really cool that they were able to realize that vision, even if it was a really complicated vision to get down on tape. The iconic drum solo in Asia was nailed down in 2 takes. Actually, they got blended together. At one point, Becker told drummer Steve Gadd, "Just play like hell." That's what he said, and that's what he did for the drum solo on Asia. It was apparently so captivating to watch him drum that some of the other players just had to sit out and stare while he did his thing and then overdub their parts later because they could not physically be playing at the same time because it was just so fun to watch.
I liked the instrumental saxophone solo.
Oh, yeah.
The drum solo was okay.
Okay. Well, the saxophone solo rivals the drum solo. It is courtesy of Dick LaPalme, who did his part in 4 takes for that saxophone solo. So again, it's kind of remarkable that the whole song came together as fast as it did. It's just so fun to listen to. Wow. Asia also ended up, of course, being Steely Dan's longest song prior to their disbanding. It is a full 8 minutes, but boy, once again, I just do not mind a single bit.
Whoa. 7 minutes and 57 seconds.
7:57. Yeah. Does it bother you that it's this long? Did this one get old?
Yeah, like I said, the drum solo was just okay. I could have done without it, but
Well, that's fair. I just think it sounds great. There's a whistle in there. I don't know. There's all kinds of funky stuff happening. And this is as close as you probably get to steel drums, around that like 3:45 mark. Rolling Stone's Michael Duffy said that Asia is the one song that shows real growth in Becker and Fagen's songwriting capabilities and departs from their previous work. And that's true. It does feel like a lot more of a mature song than anything I've heard from Pretzel Logic or Countdown to Ecstasy. But what a behemoth of a title track. And then the next song, you're right, it's also over 7.5 minutes long.
yeah, it's also a behemoth.
Yeah. Deacon Blues. It's the second single from the record.
Learn to work that
Saxophone. So fun. I play it just how I feel. It peaked at number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it would be in the top 40 for 8 whole weeks. It even cracked the top 40 on the Easy Listening chart as well. And in 2021, Rolling Stone named Deacon Blues the 214th greatest song of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, I like Deacon Blues a lot. It's kind of the perfect cross between how catchy Black Cow is and how chill Asia is. I think Deacon Blues walks that tightrope between them really well. It's still a little less intense than Black Cow, but boy, it's definitely got such a good melody on the chorus. Don Fagen was inspired, as you could probably tell by some of these lyrics, by the Alabama Crimson Tide, the football team, right, from the school. He said, hey, those guys get a nickname. He said the nerds and losers should be entitled to a grandiose name as well. So that's kind of the starting point for the whole concept of Deacon Blues. He said when Walter came over, we started on the music, then started filling in more lyrics to fit the story. At the time, there had been a lineman with the Los Angeles Rams and the San Diego Chargers, Deacon Jones. We weren't serious football fans, but Deacon Jones' name was in the news a lot in the 60s and early 70s, and we liked how it sounded. It also had 2 syllables, which was convenient, like Crimson. The name had nothing to do with Wake Forest Demon Deacons or any other team with a losing record. The only Deacon I was familiar with in football at the time was Deacon Jones. And so this is him giving the losers a nickname, right? Alabama gets to be the Crimson Tide. They're the winners. It's all cool. The losers, like me, get to be Deacon Blues. To Fagen, he said it's a broken dream of a broken man living a broken life.
I don't know which one I liked better, Asia or Deacon Blues.
You don't know?
I think Deacon Blues.
I would lean that way too, but I wouldn't fault you if you leaned the other way.
The problem is the 757 really ate up a lot of my patience for a super long song.
Oh.
And so I lost a little bit of it for Deacon Blues, but I think Deacon Blues is the better song.
I think so.
I just think I was a little worn down. Wasn't ready for another marathon.
Well, that's fair. Yeah.
Like, imagine running a marathon and then being like, all right, time to run another one in 30 minutes.
Time to get up and do another marathon.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a half marathon then. It's like running a half marathon and then realizing you've got another half marathon left.
Well, no, at least that's what we're about to do in a couple tracks. We get a 1-track break and then we do a half marathon.
Yeah, no, that's kind of a good point. It's not all that bad. Boy, I really do like the song, though. It's fun. It's about a guy who wants to be a musician, so he learns to work the saxophone, right? He tries to get out of his boring, dull life, his Deacon Blues life, by becoming a musician. Don Fagen says, many people have assumed the song is about a guy in the suburbs who ditches his life to become a musician. And, I mean, that's what the lyrics would lead you to believe. But Fagen says, in truth, I'm not sure the guy actually achieves his dream. He might not even play the horn. It's the fantasy life of a suburban guy from a certain subculture. So there's a little ambiguity there over whether Deacon Blues actually does get himself up and moving and learn to work the saxophone, or whether it's just a pipe dream that he's never going to fully realize. And I really like the way that affects whether this is a happy, optimistic song or like truly just kind of a sad, reflective song. What did you think about this saxophone solo compared to Asia's?
I think I like this one better.
Really? I kind of agree with that.
Well, then why'd you say really so incredulously?
Well, just because I wanted to be expressive. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I think the song lends itself to a saxophone solo a lot easier than Asia does.
I was just like, yeah, I think I like this one better. And you're like,
No
really?
way.
Well, you're right.
You gotta be kidding me. Absolutely. That's true. Well, this time the one who's learned to work the saxophone is Pete Christlieb. He said, they told me to play what I felt. Hey, I'm a jazz musician. That's what I do. So I recorded my first solo. We listened back and they said it was great. I recorded a second take, and that's the one they used. I was gone in a half hour. Next thing I know, I'm hearing myself in every airport bathroom in the world. Which is funny because I've never heard it in an airport bathroom, but I feel like Deacon Blues is exactly airport bathroom music, right? It just fits that vibe. It's fun. Fagen said one thing we did right on Deacon Blues and all of our records, we never tried to accommodate the mass market. We worked for ourselves and still do, which I think is fitting for a song that's about standing out confidently, even though you're a Deacon Blues loser. So we finished the back-to-back marathons of Asia and Deacon Blues, and then you got to get up and flip the record over. Really, you got to get to side 2. And
you collapse from doing a second marathon, and they're like, all right, now hang on, get up and switch the song.
Right, keep it going. Well, we get next into Peg, the lead single, and definitely one of my favorites. Seems to be the case for the masses.
Yeah, you really like Peg?
I like Peg. It's the most popular streamed song on the album by a third. It hit number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it stayed on the charts for 19 weeks, which makes it tied for the longest Steely Dan song on the charts. So that's cool. And unlike a lot of these other songs, where session players walk right in and nailed it, right? Unlike Deacon Blues, where the guys are like, I was done in half an hour, and they loved the second take of my part. Well, Peg wasn't quite so lucky. They went through 7 session guitarists just for the song's guitar solo. And even then, Jay Graydon worked on his winning version for more than 6 hours before they finally gave it the green light. Like, Peg took a lot of precision to get right. And also, this is the song where Michael McDonald comes in, crushes some background vocals. I mean, he sings entire chords in harmony in the background of Peg, and he sounds great. The whole song sounds great. This brings the Black Cow energy and takes it to another level, maybe even 2 levels higher. It's fast, it's funky, it's fun. Peg's really kind of got it all. Don said, imagine that Peg takes place at a seedy photo shoot in LA in the 1950s. All the lyrics are from the perspective of the jilted boyfriend who is still hanging around. The scene is seedy because show business is seedy. Even what most people think are the heights of show business still has the seediness of a vaudeville dressing room. And I think that might set a record as a quote that says the word seedy the most times. The song is definitely about a real life person, but I don't think the band has ever come out and said who it is. It's also, though, likely not somebody who's named Peg. Fagen said there's no hidden meaning. We just wanted a dotted half note for that spot, and Peg was short enough to fit with the music. Does it bother you that Peg is short for Margaret? I mean, that's got to be one of the most efficient shortenings of all time.
I mean, it's a stretch.
It's a stretch, right? It's like, where does Bob come from in Robert? But even then, I get that a little bit.
Yeah.
But Margaret to Peg that's a far cry.
Yeah.
Boy, it's just so fun. Pitchfork called Peg the perfect Steely Dan song.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm curious to see whether it makes your top 3. I feel like it will. I don't know. You get to take most of the album. There's a non-zero chance that it'll miss the mark, but I doubt it.
Well, you ready for a half marathon to cool off?
I suppose I am.
Bring the muscles down slowly after those 2 major marathons.
I don't know if you know how marathons work.
It's another thing people do, like after like a sports game or after a workout, they'll do just like 1 or 2 like jog laps to kind of...
Yeah, you got to cool down a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, one thing's for sure, after these marathons are over, we will be home at last. Just like this song, Home at Last. Here it is. We're back into longer songs now. I'm surprised, honestly, that Home at Last is like the 3rd longest song on the record. Sure doesn't feel like it. Or maybe it just doesn't earn its length as much as Asia and Deacon Blues do to me. It's got a different kind of a beat to it, which I really enjoy. And I kind of thought you'd have a good shot at liking Home at Last a little better because the popular theory is that the lyrics in Home at Last are a reference to Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey, where Odysseus goes on all his adventures and quests and tries to get home at last.
I am a big fan of The Odyssey.
Yeah. Did you catch it in the lyrics?
Yeah.
The danger on the rocks is surely past, but still I remain tied to the mast, because Odysseus had to be tied to the ship's mast to keep from jumping into the water when he heard sirens singing.
I mean, he didn't have to be. He asked to be, so he didn't have to wear the beeswax. He wanted to hear what his... Anyway, we don't have to get into all that.
Right. He wanted to hear the sirens. It's a really cool concept.
You're a cool concept.
Thank you. I try.
Poorly executed, but a cool concept.
Wow, okay. The song or me?
Look into your heart. You know which one.
I can't believe you don't like this song. I really like the refrain. It doesn't have much of a chorus to speak of, unless it's like the danger on the rocks is surely past, I remain tied to the mast. But Home at Last is such a good refrain, and the instrumentals that separate it from the other verses are really nice. It's very, like, smooth. It's a good song to get into the groove of. Definitely would go in my top 5, I think. It's another song that feels like it goes by really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for 5.5 minutes, it really does move right along. But personally to me, I feel like once we pass Home at Last, we've kind of peaked on the album
Ooh.
prior to that point. Now, I'm not saying Home at Last is the peak. I'm just saying the peak comes definitely before I Got the News and Josie. But especially I Got the News, you know, it seems to be the least popular track on the album as far as the lingering Spotify plays go. I mean, it's still got more than 8 million, so it's no slouch. But it definitely doesn't have the same wow factor as virtually every other song.
Yeah.
7 out of 7 on wow factor. According to the album's liner notes, they say, I Got the News, a Manhattan jukebox thump-along, serves as a vehicle for the coy pianistics of Victor Feldman, whose labors are capriciously undermined by Walter Becker's odd, Django-esque guitar and a pointlessly obscene lyric. They refer to their own lyrics as pointlessly obscene. And I just like Steely Dan's sense of humor, or like they're just their style. Because what on earth kind of a pretentious liner note is that, right? They make pretentious music. I can admit that, but it's good. It's like, have you seen that clip of Family Guy where they're talking about The Godfather? Like they're about to drown and they ask him what he thought about The Godfather, and Peter's like, it insists on itself. I feel like Steely Dan kind of insist on themselves, but I don't think it's unearned. I don't know. You can hear Michael McDonald in the background of I Got the News too. He's here. It's definitely a fun song. It's maybe the most upbeat on the entire album. And I don't know why it doesn't land better for me. Because I like a good upbeat song. It's got every other staple. I just don't know. It's just not there. And the album closes with the song that is the least like any other song on this album at all. Josie, the third and final single. It did go to number 26 on that Hot 100. And it's a lot less jazzy and a little more blues rocky.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why it's more popular. Shoot, it's got more streams than Asia does. Mm-hmm. And almost as many as Black Cow, which I don't think is fair.
Dang. He doesn't think it's fair.
No.
How dare you, audience, not be fair to Steely Dan.
Oh, come on, man. Give them a chance. Give the good jazzy Steely Dan songs a chance. Leave Josie alone. I just don't like the style for them as much as I like their jazz-infused style. The rock is fine, but I can hear a lot of rock music like Josie from a lot of places. You don't get a Deacon Blues out of every band, but it is still a good song. And once again, it is a more palatable length, right? At 4 minutes and 33 seconds, it's the second shortest song on this album. So I can respect that. Fagen said, I grew up in New Jersey and traveled into New York a lot. I went to public school, and the way kids used to talk got into the songs. It's demotic slang. Walter and I enjoy making up our own slang. We'd make up slang advertising slogans. For example, in Josie, a street gang uses a weapon called a battle apple. I don't know what that is, but it sounded better than anything else we could come up with. So they're just making up words, making up slang because it sounds cool and fits the vibe of the song. And I can really appreciate that from a lyrical standpoint, but boy, do I wish it made more sense. And I think that's what the critics talk about when they say that musically, Steely Dan's really advanced, but lyrically, they're as obtuse as they've ever been on Asia. It's because they just make things up. And you kind of get it, but it kind of doesn't mean anything. It's curious. What did you think of Josie as a closing track?
I think it's a good closer. I like Josie.
I think it's strong enough. It's fine as a closer. I don't know. I feel like I'm coming across as way harsher than I feel towards it.
I think it's a better upbeat song than I Got the News.
Yes. Oh, definitely. I agree with that. I just think I underappreciate it, maybe.
Yeah, and I like that he just gets in and gets out. Shortest song? Well, that's not
shortest.
Peg was the shortest, but second shortest song. Just gets in, does its thing, and gets out.
Yeah.
Well, is it final spin time?
I suppose it is. We should get in and get out as well. And then we can steal away. Get it? Steely Dan, steal away.
I'm going to Dan away.
You can Dan away. We can Dan on out of here.
Dan the night away.
Dan the night away. Da, 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 da. Wow. Bet that's not a thing you thought you'd hear in this Steely Dan episode. Anyway, final spin. Musically, wow. What a fun album. I really love the blend of styles and influences. I mean, top tier. 91 for the music. I think at least 5 out of these 7 songs are major earworm songs. It's great. I think this is a thoroughly Steely Dan album. I don't think a lot of other bands could make this record, and I appreciate it for that. 91 for music. Lyrics, different story. Giving them a 78. I like the way that they make up some slang and improv some things, and there's some really cool imagery in here, references to Odysseus. It's really neat. I just don't know if stuff lands as much as they want it to land. With Deacon Blues, like making a nickname for a class of people after one football player. I don't know. Learning what a black cow is really fun, but I just don't know if there's like a ton lyrically. I'm giving lyrics a 78, but this isn't an album that I come to for the lyrics, really. It's an album I come to for the production and the vibes and just the yacht rocky feel of it. For the production, I think it's really clear that they were super meticulous about it. That perfectionism really pays off. It's cool when a song comes naturally like Deacon Blues, but it's also cool that they were willing and able to put in the time. I mean, they straight up sacrificed their touring career to be able to put in the time on a song like Peg, where you can have 7 guitarists come in until you get the best song you want. That's really great, and I respect that. This album is so good, people use it as a test record. I'm giving the production and instruments an 88. Overall vibe, 90. It's a quick album as far as tracks go. Like, if you want to learn and memorize Asia, you've got 7 songs to learn. That feels really digestible. And again, they're longer, but boy, they're so easy to get through. So the album's overall score is an 87.6, which lands Asia at number 209 on my list. That puts it above. This feels totally backwards to me somehow, but it's above Earth, Wind & Fire's I Am, and it's below Miranda Lambert and The Weight of These Wings.
Interesting.
I feel like those should all be shuffled around a little bit, but hey.
Hey, that's how the cookie crumbles.
That's how the score works, yeah.
It is their way.
That's right. I think the lyric ding is the biggest thing for this one. That's what's keeping this album out of the top 200, for sure.
As for me, I quite enjoyed my first dive into the world of Steely Dan.
I thought you might, really.
I think it was just a fun album. I think some of the songs are too long, but I think when I'm not marathoning the album, that won't matter.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to give this one a simple 8 yachts out of 10.
8 yachts. See, you started the day thinking you might get a yacht at the end of the week.
Hey, I started the day with 0 yachts, and now I have 8.
Impressive, really. And now you've got 7 songs to rock on them with.
I mean, that's less than 1 song per yacht. 1 yacht's going to be songless.
Well, you could probably split Deacon Blues and Asia in half.
It's a good thing I have that whole playlist that I can bust out.
Yeah, the Forbidden Yacht Rock playlist can now see the light of day. Wonderful. I think an 8 is very respectable.
Respectable 8.
And I think that's a strong first dive into Steely Dan. Yeah.
It's gonna go right below OK Orchestra.
Interesting.
Right above Bambi by Hippocampus. My top 3 in the customary album order.
Of course.
Black Cow.
Very secretive.
Notable snub to Asia.
Wow.
Sorry, Asia. Notable snub.
That is interesting. If you're taking 4, I guess I get it. Depending on what your other 3 here are.
Deacon Blues.
Yeah, good.
Peg.
Mm-hmm.
And Home at Last as my honorable mention.
That's what I thought your other 3 would be. That is how I would order them. Honestly, yeah. Asia would be below those 4 for me. And then dealer's choice on whether even maybe Josie goes above Asia, but probably not. It would probably go Asia, Josie. I got the news.
I think I would put Josie above Asia as well.
Interesting. Up on the Hill wasn't getting it done, huh?
I don't know. I guess not.
I just like the saxophone solo. But that's a strong top 3.
It is good. Now comes the problem with playlist picks.
Yeah, that's a tough one this week. Woohoo.
I think I know what you're going to take.
Really?
I think you'll take Peg.
I would consider Peg a front runner for me, one of my shortlisted. Yeah.
And I kind of, for the playlist, want to pick my honorable mention, Home at Last, but I think they're too similar. And I think I should maybe go more Deacon Blues, a little calmer.
That's a good point.
I think I'm going to go Deacon Blues.
Okay. Yeah, I do. I think Black Cow is a very fun song, and it feels like it would vibe well with the playlist. But I really do enjoy Peg a lot. I think that'll be the way I go. I think we'll stick with Deacon Blues and Peg. I got no problems with that.
Well, there you have it.
There we do indeed have it, as the kids say. That's going to do it for another week of Spin It. Hope you've enjoyed rocking along on your yacht with us. We will see you next week for another album and another episode. If you want to find more Spin It, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to like and follow and subscribe and rate and say all the fun stuff. You can also find us on social media. Follow us on Instagram at SpinItPodOfficial, on X at SpinItPod, and visit our website at www.spinitpod.com. Kids under 13, get your parents' permission before going online. And also, you shouldn't be listening to the podcast. I mean, I guess you can be.
I mean, it's family friendly.
We're pretty family friendly.
The songs aren't always family friendly, but we try
are.
to be family friendly.
I'm friendly towards families.
I'm not.
Well, you do a good job of reining it in for about an hour and a half every week.
Hey, if you're sitting there
I am sitting here.
thinking to yourself,
I am thinking to myself,
man, I sure would like to share this podcast, but I don't know who to share it with.
man, yeah.
Well, you know what? You should tell a friend. Well, you should really just tell everybody. If you don't know, just blast it to everybody. But
spread the word.
specifically, if you're looking for someone specific, tell a friend who you would want to get a big black cow with.
Oh, fun. You could go get a big black cow together and listen to the podcast.
Exactly.
Although podcast listening is usually a pretty solo endeavor, I think. But you do you. Black cow drinking can be with as many people as you want. So drink your big black cow and get out of here. Have a great week. And until next time, you know what to do.
What do I do?
Keep spinning.
Oh, keep spinning.
You knew what to do.
Do you think Copper Sam is the arch enemy of the Title Track Bandit? He's the cop that's like got the cold case. Like,
Oh, he's like investigating.
so like always like one step behind him. He's like, he's so close, I can feel it. And like,
Yeah.
throws all his papers off his desk and
Consider this though. Maybe Copper Sam is the Title Track Bandit.
whoa, living a double life.
Uh-huh.
It's like that idea for a rom-com where it's like a mob boss and a police officer are like married.
Yeah, and they don't know that it's the other one. Yeah, except this time, when all your title tracks go missing, don't come crying to me.
Well, I'm off to figure out where to put my 8 yachts.
Your 8 yachts, put them in the creek.